Olá, boa tarde a todos, muito obrigada pela presença. O Piano e Suas Perspectivas é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas, Pró-Reitoria de Extensão e Cultura, Reitoria Digital da Universidade Federal de Goiás, com a Mississippi State University nos Estados Unidos e Universidad del Atlántico na Colômbia, com o apoio da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia de Portugal, Centro de Estudos de Sociologia e Estética Musical da Universidade Nova de Lisboa, Centro de Estudos Brasileiros, Rádio Universitária e Rádio Brasil Central FM. Fazem parte da equipe do programa Além de Mim, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Seba e Yamira Nunes. Nossa proposta é levar a todos os interessados assuntos relacionados à importância da arte e seu papel na sociedade. E mais uma vez temos um convidado muito especial dos Estados Unidos, que é o Robert Klingbeil. E a entrevistadora de hoje será a nossa parceira do projeto, doutora Rosângela Seba. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. I am very excited to have Robert with us, and we're going to talk about his job and his amazing help that has been for all the pianists here in the region. So welcome, Robert.
Thank you all for having me. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
So Robert Klingbeil has a degree from Rhodes College in piano performance, and he's also the institutional representative of Steinway. And he has been working with several institutions, colleges, as well as universities and churches about building the Steinway program and also renewing the pianos in those institutions. So welcome. Can you explain a little bit of what you do, Robert?
Sure, absolutely. So my role, I'm the Director of Institutional Sales for the Steinway Piano Gallery here in Nashville, Tennessee. And I work a lot with colleges and universities spread out through about a 5 or 6 state region. So primarily my role is relationship building. It can be creating new relationships, nurturing old ones, and preserving. But every institution has unique needs, and helping to understand what those needs are and how we might be able to plug in and help overcome obstacles and challenges that those departments may be experiencing, or just improve upon what's already a great thing. That's in a nutshell what I do, but a lot of that just comes from talking to people and getting to know folks and listening, a lot of listening and paying attention to where those needs are.
Robert also has a degree in music, and he has studied piano for a long, long time. One of the things that we have been talking about in this podcast is the importance of having music lessons and how that leads you to different jobs related to music or not. But can you tell us how you started learning music?
Sure. So growing up, my dad was a physician, a doctor outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and he also played the piano. And he was going to be playing for one of my sister's weddings, who was getting married in our home. And I was about 5 years old when this wedding was happening. And while he was practicing for it, I would come in, and apparently I would start, noodling around on the piano and playing while he was trying to practice. So he made a deal with me, and he just said, "Son, if you'll when I'm in here practicing, you're welcome to be in here. But if you just kind of respect that I need to work, and I'll show you a few things when the wedding is over." Then that was kind of the deal that we made. And so he showed me a few things after the wedding was over, and I liked it. And he said that, okay, at that point, we'll get you some lessons. And so I started taking piano lessons like a lot of kids did, starting around 6 years old or so, 5 or 6. And I just continued to play for the rest of my elementary, middle, and high school career, with the goal for me, at least what I thought my goal was at the time, was to go on to school for pre-med. And so that's why I chose to go to Rhodes College in Memphis, where I ended up, was initially to major in medicine. So I also liked the school because it was liberal arts, and I could do the science courses, but I could also continue with my piano because I just didn't want to give that up. After a year or so in school, I realized that maybe science wasn't going to be my thing, and realized that due to my teacher, I had really strong connection with my piano teacher in college. She kind of helped me to see that music was where my passion was. I didn't really know what that meant for me as a career path at that time, but I knew that that's what made me happy. So I ended up switching to music without really any kind of long-range plan. So it was a big leap of faith. So I started focusing more on my piano. When I got out of college, I still didn't really have a plan. So I went into teaching kindergarten through 6th grade orphan music in the Memphis City schools for a year while I figured it out. And at that point, I switched teachers. I was passed on to a new teacher who also taught at the University of Memphis. And so after a year of that, I went back to school at the University of Memphis and worked on my master's degree when I was there. So I finished that degree still without really a big plan. And towards the end of that degree, I started working on a new degree in musicology with the intention of going on for a PhD. But I needed time to kind of get my feet on the ground and figure out, how do I want to pursue this? Where do I want to go? What do I want this to turn into in a career path? So I was like, I need a break from school. So I went on up to the Steinway piano dealer in town. And as a pianist, that was the only piano for me. And I was just looking for something to do in the short term. I didn't really know that. I wasn't thinking of a career, I'll put it that way. I was just looking for something to kind of pay some bills at the time. I had no business background, no sales, anything like that. Just was a musician. I loved the instrument. So anyhow, I got hired to mostly represent an organ line at the time, which was very much about relationship building and getting into churches. People don't go out and buy organs every day. And this is the case for a lot of us. When we do buy something, a lot of times we buy from people that we like. It doesn't really matter what it is, but if you don't like the person you're working with, then you're probably not going to want to do business with them. So I learned quickly that was an important part of the process, along with maintaining communication and just being present, listening and stuff. So anyhow, I learned that in a rural area where there was a university, I could oftentimes go to the university in the music department and visit a whole bunch of professors that also had jobs in churches in and around the area. And so I didn't have to go to all the individual churches. I could just go to the one school and see everybody that I needed to see. And as a result of doing that, I had built all these relationships with people at that university, so that when they were wanting to become an all-Steinway school, I was already in place to help them. They knew me, I knew them. There was no layers of trust that, or distrust that needed to be overcome. We all were old friends at that point. And so we could work well together to get them over the finish line and become an all-Steinway school. And I guess at that point in my career, this has been, I've been doing this for 21 years now. And this was maybe 16 years ago or so. I realized that, I wrestled with, why did I drop out of medicine and go into music and end up selling pianos? It's not something that you grow up saying that's what you want to do. And going back to my father, as a physician, he was your old-timey country doctor that used to deliver babies and patch broken legs and arms and whatever somebody needed, and make house calls. And if people didn't have the money to pay him, then they might pay him by having us over for dinner, or here's a basket of apples, or, here's what we have. This is what I can give you. And it was a barter situation, and he was happy to do it. And those patients of his adored him and just thought he was a great person, which he was. But growing up as a child, it wasn't uncommon with a name like Klingbeil that most people don't know people with that kind of last name. They would recognize my last name and realize, oh, you're the son of Dr. Klingbeil. Well, he fixed my broken leg when I was a kid, and and all this stuff. So anyway, moving forward into my career path, I realized that what drew me to this kind of job was that it wasn't the medicine that I wanted to be around. It was that relationship that my dad had with his patients that I really appreciated. And that's the relationship that I try to have with my clients, I guess, for lack of a better word. I hate to call them clients because people like Rose are family, you know? So we just, we get close. And sometimes we have some trauma bonding where we go through some hard times and we come out of it on the other side, but we come out of it, and it's a good thing. I don't know what else I would do with myself. So I thought going through school that when you get degrees like a master's or a PhD, that your career path is limited to, not limited, I shouldn't say that way, but it's focused on, you know, teaching in higher ed, which I thought I wanted to do. But I think that there are a lot more opportunities than for people that are considering music than just, you know, than going that direction. There's a lot of avenues to explore.
So
and even if you don't go down one of those music related avenues, I do think that the study of music and however far you go with it definitely equips you to be a meaningful employee or business owner or whatever you want to be in any kind of career that you choose. I've had a lot of friends that have gotten out of music that are very successful in whatever career path they have chosen.
So who was your main influence in that decision or in your life?
I would say there's been several people at several stages. I mean, my father, and with the support of my mom as well. My mom wasn't a musical person, but she appreciated music, and both of my parents were Depression era children. So they came from a background where they wouldn't have a lot of opportunities like I was afforded. And it was important to them to give me those kinds of opportunities and to be a well-rounded individual. So, you know, the initial influencers were certainly my mom and my dad. But then when I got into college, I had several professors, two in particular. One was my advisor and one was my piano teacher that were important role models for me that helped guide. They weren't trying to tell me what to do, but they were inspirational. You know, my advisor in college, I just talked to him this morning, as a matter of fact. And, you know, he was a groomsman in my wedding. So, I mean, we got to be close. And my piano teacher, her name was Marcia, I would say was like a second mom to me. There were a lot of lessons that we spent more time talking about life than we did actually playing the piano. But at that moment, that's what I needed. And she was there for me during those moments. So that relationship is not to be taken for granted, because I think that after that, I went into it thinking, oh, this is how it is in higher ed. You know, that you just have that kind of relationship with your professors. And then I realized, no, after I got a little bit further along, that I was very lucky to have had that kind of relationship that I did. And then after that, I would say when I got into my role in selling pianos, that there have been other people in the industry that have served kind of as role models and people to help me take the next step to be better at what I do. And I think that you're always learning. You know, life would be boring if you got to a finish line and then there was nowhere else to go. You know, you always have to challenge yourself. You always have to be open to receiving new information and new messages and learning how you can be better at what you do.
And can you tell us a little bit about your training to become a Steinway institutional representative? Because I know there is a process and there is a lot of training as well. Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, I would say that's a kind of a tough question to answer, because a lot of it is based on sink or swim. You know, like a lot of businesses just kind of, they hire you because you can fog a mirror, and you know they want to make sure that they got somebody that's going to show up to work on time, that you know will be clean and presentable and can speak to folks. you're looking for personal traits that, are they a good listener? It's not so much about how well you play, because a lot of folks in this business don't play, believe it or not. I'm not the one buying a piano. You're the one buying a piano. So it's, do you like the piano? Not do I like the piano? But when it comes to training, a lot of it's an investment on the part of the business owner to hire a salesperson, because usually it takes a long time of trial and error. A lot of in the baseball world, we would call it at bats. You got to get up and you got to swing, and you're going to hit some, and you're going to strike out a few times. And so when you get the hits, you ask yourself, well, what did I do right? What was it about this situation that worked out? And was it accidental, or was it my skill set that helped me to get that hit? And when I struck out, you have to ask yourself, well, what did I do wrong? How could I have made myself better? And so most business owners will allow a salesperson to have those successes and failures for probably a year or more before they want to invest more money in you, because you have to want this. This is not something that you can kind of just do blasé, and you have to be all in. So once you've sort of proven that that's and that the person is going to stick around, then we have at Steinway specific, there's what they call WSU, the William Steinway University. William Steinway was the first president of the company, and so they name it after him. And they have several different, roughly week-long classes that salespeople can attend that help them understand product knowledge, that help them, so more in-depth detail about the piano in general, and then drill in a little bit deeper into what makes a Steinway different. And then also training and just selling in general, which when you're in high-end, what a lot of people would refer to as luxury sales, a lot of it's psychological. A lot of it is understanding where the person you're talking to might be coming from, paying attention to their body language and their cues that they may be giving to you. The questions that they ask might help guide you as the salesperson into what the next question might need to be. So you just have to be able to think on your feet, to listen to people, and so these classes that are offered often they're designed to kind of help pull that out of folks. But I would say a lot of the learning is by doing and by listening to people that are veterans in the industry that have experienced successes and failures. I think those that fail have a lot more and pull themselves up from failure have a lot more to teach.
Well, I always thought that you knew a lot about piano, the mechanism and how it sounds, because you sit down and play as well. So that helps a lot. Sometimes when we were selecting some pianos, I listened to you, because you always had an input. Tell us a little bit more about what makes a university an all Steinway school.
So the All Steinway School program was actually something that Steinway didn't invent. They didn't create it. Schools kind of over the years found themselves choosing the piano because that's what they wanted. And after, with the very first one being Oberlin back in 1877. And so I would say it was probably close to 100 years after that Steinway started to realize, oh my gosh, there are schools out there that are choosing our brand for X, Y, and Z reasons. And maybe there's an opportunity here for us. And so I would say that's kind of what motivated them to kind of develop a quote defined program. And so when a school becomes an all Steinway school, they are allowed to use the brand. It's a brand association. So you have rights to the logo, you have rights to the name. Obviously you have the best equipment possible for your students to learn on as well. So Steinway created some parameters, I guess, that need to be met in order for a school to be able to have the rights to the name and the brand association and all of that. And so some of those parameters have to include the inventory mix has to be right. You know, your concert instruments have to be Steinway grands or Steinway pianos. Your teaching instruments for majors have to be Steinways, and your practice rooms that majors will be using would be Steinways as well, with the allowance of a mix of Boston and Essex pianos and other usages. Your piano inventory has to be in tip-top shape. We've all seen pianos that are out there that might have the right name brand on the label, but have been sitting out in somebody's garage for 30 years. And, you know, that's just not a piano that exudes excellence, right? If it hasn't been maintained, then it doesn't really matter what kind of piano it is. It's unfortunately not been maintained. So there's a maintenance sort of obligation or commitment there that the school makes upon themselves to be able to take up that title. So, I mean, there's other criteria, but those are probably the two main ones, making sure the inventory is right and that the pianos are well maintained. So,
yeah, one of the
and
things
that's part of what I do is I go in there and I help a school to see that, because a lot of times people, especially administrators, don't know what they have or what kind of condition those instruments are in. And so as a service that I provide, that guys like me at Steinway do, is we go to the schools and we call it an inventory analysis and go in and look at every piano and every space and condense this into a report that can be presented to administrators. Sorry,
yeah, I think one of the things, the misconception that we had here when we went through the process was that people were going to donate their pianos to us, and not all of them were in good shape. And we had to also kind of let them know that not only we needed a Steinways, but we needed them in good shape, and also with all the pieces inside the instrument that were original from Steinway, not just replacing any other parts. Robert, I also would like to, if possible, Andrea, to show some of the pictures. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so that's from a recent selection that happened in our factory in New York earlier this summer. And so basically these two faculty members here are from a university that have the university had already committed and basically made the purchase of a new concert grand. But when that happens, we get to go to New York and pick from among several concert grands which one is going to come home. So it's like, you know, there's a litter of puppies and we're going to decide which one comes home with us. And because all the pianos have their own personality. I remember, like, if you're looking from left to right in that picture, the second one in would have been a great concerto piano. It was very big and present, but that's not the space that they were picking a piano for. They needed something a little bit more rich in tone and intimate in sound, and so they found the right piano for them. But it's a great experience. There's never a bad instrument in the bunch. It's just there's one that's better for what you're picking it for. And in this case, these are some faculty from the university. We were there with the donor and the vice president of development and the department chair. And it was, we started the morning with a great tour of the factory to kind of meet some of the workers and see how the pianos are constructed. And then it culminates with a visit to the selection room where they have the rest of the day to sort of play over all the pianos and figure out which one they want to go home with.
And I think also you guys provide a technician on the site to sit and make changes in case we wanted to change something in an instrument. Right. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a selection room technician that works for the factory that is on hand for the entire process. So if you have a piano where you love the way it feels, but maybe there's an octave in the treble that's a little bit understated and you want it to be brought out a little bit more, but you love the rest of the piano, then the technician can take care of that while maybe you're using the restroom or grabbing some lunch or playing on a different piano. Or if the pedal maybe feels a little too tight or too loose, they make adjustments to that. There's some things that they can do to help refine the instrument on site while making that selection.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to maybe have you talk about is the people that work in Steinway. I met several of them, and they were amazing people. They were working there for years.
Right.
Can you talk about those people that have been in Steinway for 40 years?
So the joke at the factory is that you have to have worked there for 20 years before they quit referring it to you as the rookie. So you have to think about, like, a handmade instrument is not something that you can just pluck somebody off the street randomly and in a couple of weeks expect them to know how to do this fine work. So a lot of the folks are multiple generations, like their parents, usually their fathers or grandfathers would have worked there. And a lot of the workers generally are going to start at the very bottom. And by that, I mean sweeping the floors, and just doing basic labor, and then work their way up like an apprentice. Basically, you're apprenticing, and it could be years before you kind of become the master technician at whatever whatever part of the piano it is that you're assigned to work on. So you have folks that work at the factory that come from all over the world. Literally, I mean, it's like the United Nations. I mean, it's a very diverse workforce, and I would say a lot of some of the woodworkers, there's still a tradition of woodworking that exists in Eastern Europe. So a lot of folks come from there, but they're really from all over the planet, and it's really fascinating. And the more times you get to go, you're going to recognize the faces, because it's not like they have huge turnover. I mean, when people get a job to work at the Steinway factory, it's a very valuable job for the people at Steinway, but also for that worker, because it's just a good gig to have.
Yeah. Sorry for the sound. I was trying to show, and I'm going to ask Andrea to show the YouTube link. To show the Spirio, which is an instrument that I have right here. That's right here, and the first one. And I have been using that instrument also as a teaching tool, as well as a connection with other institutions that have that. We can connect the instruments and teach, as well as listen to each other. So here is the new technology Spirio R. All right. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Spirio? And then I will say what I have been doing with the Spirio that has been very helpful to bring my teaching skills to the 21st century.
Sure. So for decades, Steinway has talked about having their own, essentially a player system, but in order for it to be a Steinway, it has to be perfect. And so they move slow at Steinway, but when they commit to something, they're going to make sure that it's done right. And so the Spirio system took a long time to be developed in a way that was acceptable to everybody at Steinway. And by acceptable, I don't mean just the people that work for Steinway, but to the artists and to the teachers that are out there. That was the audience that Steinway was really after, to make sure that they were happy. In other words, it doesn't do any good to to create something that you think is great if the artists aren't going to embrace it. And so that buy-in from artists was critical to Spirio in the development. So the first generation of Spirio was introduced in 2015. And essentially that piano was a playback piano only for the most part, and some videos. And this opened up a whole new market of piano buyer that we didn't even know existed. But it caught on real fast. And then some people like myself and a few others out there kind of made some noise like, this is great, but we need it to be a little bit more relevant to the institutional world, colleges and universities. And so I think they'd already been working on it, but that's when the Spirio R version came out, which is what we have in this picture behind us here. But the piano more or less is able to do all the things that the first generation did, and also be able to record in high definition, to play back the recording, to edit the recording, to broadcast to other Spirios on the planet, to receive broadcasts, which we call Spiriocasts. So you might have an artist performing today at 2:00 Eastern from New York City that we could open up that broadcast down in Starkville, Mississippi, and watch it live and hear her piano playing in real time. There are ideas and ways that people like me might think that it's useful in the world of education. But what we found is that once you get it into the hands of somebody who's not afraid to play with technology, they find their own ways. And people like Rose are able to take a piano like that and tailor it to whatever she needs it to do for her students to benefit them.
Yeah, so. Let me explain what I'm doing.
Yeah.
As we know, as teachers, our students know way more than we do. And whenever we try to correct them, we have a lot of times that we hear, well, that's what I did. And so I have been asking students that I cannot correct them immediately because they don't accept their mistakes, or second, or both, they cannot hear their mistakes. So record them. So I said, well, we'll take a moment and we're going to record you. And then we sit back with the score, and I pointed out what I've been trying to fix, and immediately they recognize their mistakes, and they are like, oh, I didn't know I was playing like that. Because one thing is when you play in here, once you are away from the piano, you hear much more. Another thing that I tried is sometimes when students are trying to play certain things, and sorry, my phone is ringing, then they are trying to overuse the pedal, or they are playing too fast or too loud. And I asked them, please do not do that, because it's a little too loud or too fast, or the pedal is too much. And so what we do is I sit back with them and we listen to the composer or another pianist playing, and they realize that what they were trying to do is not exactly what it was supposed to be. It's really nice to hear Rachmaninoff's own recordings of his music, and it's a lesson to all of us. Another thing that I am trying to do is broadcast. Sometimes the broadcast is not at the time that we can hear, but after that we can listen to concerts all over the world right here in my office. These are wonderful. And I have had many students that are recording their music for auditions for grad school. And we can record in the cloud, and they can email themselves, or we can put in a jump drive. Sometimes they use that recording also to participate in conferences. And so we have been using that quite a lot. And recently I have been in touch with other faculty members with the same Spirio capability. So we can do master classes. We will connect via FaceTime, and then the student will play from Virginia, and I'm here listening. Then we switch pianos and I play. So it's been very helpful. I have been working on this. This will be my next step. But another thing that I use quite a lot is when I'm accompanying a student in a concerto. I have been playing and teaching at the same time. It's much easier for me to record the orchestra part, sit back, let them do their solo with the already recorded orchestra reduction, so I can teach them. And they can come here and rehearse as many times as they want instead of waiting for me to do so. So if you can, I will recommend any teacher to experiment with the Stereo and be able to purchase a Stereo. It has been very helpful in my studio lately. I have had this for the past 3 years since we moved to this new building, and we got the institution, All-Stein Institution, and so it has been very helpful.
I would just add to that too, for people that maybe haven't experienced one or that familiar with it, just to know that first and foremost, it's still a Steinway piano, and that was critical for Steinway in the development of this, that piano exists as an acoustic Steinway first before it, you start talking about all this technology. So no one should be, there's nothing invasive to the action. There's nothing that affects the way it the touch or the feel of the piano. It's still the same piano that you would love and expect a Steinway to be first, and then it does all this other stuff on top of that. And the development of this piano now is accounting for roughly 50% of Steinway's total global production. So it's not a flash in the pan piece of technology that we expect to disappear. I think that it's very much here to stay.
And one thing that I liked is that they are recording artists all over, still recording them. And I received in the iPad that you saw, I received the updates. Another thing that I would like to show, and this is something that we have in the Stereo R, and I show to my students, is the factory has people that work really hard in their fields, but they are also very knowledgeable about music, and they enjoy pianists. So I think it's once a month, or right, Robert, that they will stop and bring an artist for them to listen. Can you talk about this? Is Olga Kern performing for the factory? Can you say a couple of other words about it?
So at the beginning of each month, an email goes out for all of the scheduled Stereo casts that are going to happen that month. So you can log in at any time, whatever those times are, to catch a Stereo broadcast. And then what they've started doing is taking kind of like a Netflix subscription. They'll take some of those and they'll have them on demand for a period of time. So if you can't make it, you can't make the live production or performance of it, then you might be able to watch a recording of it later on for a certain period of time. But artists going to the factory, like Olga Kern, stuff like that, that's something that happens every now and then. But the artists are very, especially her, who she's in New York, like to pay it forward by going back and giving back to the people that built these wonderful instruments and do concerts for them as well. But yeah, there are artists all over the planet that contribute to these Stereo casts and to the music that exists on the piano as well. The library in a Stereo started at zero. I mean, 10 years ago, there wasn't a music library because it didn't exist. They weren't going to take libraries from other builders and put them into the Steinway, so they have to create it. So they're constantly recording artists, having them come to New York or studio in Hamburg or even in China, and recording their music, and then it all goes through a sort of a remastering of, I guess it goes through the nerds that live in the sound booth kind of thing for a while. And then every month they upload about 3 to 4 more hours worth of music into the library. And so all the Stereos that have been sold and continue to be sold have that library get updated. So you're constantly adding more music to the library with each passing month.
So we're going to hear Olga Kern playing in the factory for the workers, as well as you're going to see some of this CFOs, CEOs sitting there as well as enjoying it.
As an instrumentalist, as the soloist, as an artist, we try to reach each composer's heart.
Olga, you are playing an all Rachmaninoff program today. Why is that?
I feel like all pianists must play Rachmaninoff because it's so pianistically well done. And he was such a genius as a pianist. So, of course, it feels right to perform his music. I think that he was like a pop composer of 20th century. His Rhapsody in Latin Paganini 18th variation that Hollywood movies were always using, and then C-sharp minor prelude. Everybody can understand his music because it's just written from the heart. His reach was enormous, and he could do anything. And this is what we hear. You really need to have this ability of a big sound and then that energy and that deep understanding of his feelings.
The big hands of Rachmaninoff, the pianist, are certainly featured in his C-sharp minor prelude. A very celebrated piece that made Rachmaninoff famous early in his career.
That piece was really special. And yes, he was playing it in every concert as encore. And actually he recorded it 3 times. He had so much to say in just that short piece. The feelings are so big and there is so much drama and tragedy behind. He was a young man. How he could actually feel that way.
You're also playing Rachmaninoff transcriptions today.
Yeah, all Rachmaninoff transcriptions are just such a unique pieces. We have transcriptions by Bach, by Bizet, and then Chrysler, all great and exciting in the different ways. About the Lilacs, it's his own song, and this piece is very special for him. This is, I think, why he transcribed it for the piano as well. In one period of time when he was performing a lot in Russia, after each concert, no matter what period of year it was, he was always getting lilacs after the concert. And he couldn't find out who was that person who was sending these beautiful flowers to him. And only a couple of years later, they found out that it was actually a wonderful, beautiful Russian poetess, Marietta Shaginyan. And he wrote this beautiful song for lilacs. He's talking about hope, about love, and about that happiness which actually lives in lilacs. So, of course, he wanted to transcribe it for the piano. So when I play something like Lilacs, I feel like it's actually better on the piano than when you sing, because he puts a lot of different elements inside and then little inner voices. And when the piano sings, there is nothing better. His music is so deep emotionally, and of course it's hard pianistically, but years after years, I understand that it's more about feelings. It's more about the soul of this incredible composer.
Yeah, this for me is one of the videos that I try to show to my students, because not always you're gonna have a audience full of pianists, and it's our job as pianists to promote the best music to anybody. And it's a tool, it's an education tool, and completely appreciative to what you do. And seeing Olga Kern playing that, it's just beautiful. And all the workers there, and I can recognize some of them, and it's just amazing. And having Steinway providing this to them. So whenever I went to the factory, which were many times, they were proud of the work that they do. I think one of the things that we have to highlight always is that we need to make good music and good instruments to make good music. And I'm pretty much satisfied with what we have right now in my institution. So, Robert, can you tell us a little bit about, going back to your music making? I know that you are an organist as well, and you have played the organ for a good bit of time. Tell us a little bit about what you've done with your playing the organ.
Sure. So like I said earlier, when I first got into the business, it was representing organs for churches. And then that kind of parlayed well into working with colleges, universities, and anything that was sort of long-term strategic processes and selling. When, I don't know, I was a couple of years in the business, I'd always been involved in church music and singing in choirs. And I was at a church one time where the organist went out of town, and when he left, he had somebody come in to sub for him. And to my ears, she was a bit of a train wreck. And I just thought, well, I've had some organ. I can at least do a good job as she did. And man, so the next time he took me up on that and put me on the bench, and it was rough. I'm not going to lie. When you mess up on the organ, everybody knows. But it fired me up. I wanted to do better. And so I I learned to shut up too. Don't say you can do something better than somebody else unless you really can. But I learned to do it. And I had a former college professor of mine who was playing at the church next door to where I was going, and he got sick one Sunday. And so they needed a sub in a pinch, and I was happy to do it for him. He was a good friend. And so I did, and one Sunday turned into 2, turned into 3 Sundays, and his health wasn't really improving very well. And after about 6 or 7 months, he ended up passing away, which was really sad. But anyhow, that turned into a job. And so for 9 years, I was at that particular church as the organist and choir director, which for me was a good way to satisfy my music making. I didn't have the 8 to 10 hours a day that I needed to put in on the piano like I did in grad school. But for something that was a couple of days a week, it was perfect for me. And it was a different niche. It was a way that I could bring people together and collaborate with them, which I always enjoy. My strength wasn't in improvisation and just playing the fire out of the organ like my predecessor was. I mean, I got through church services. That was about as good as I ever got. But I was really good at bringing together other small choirs that were nearby churches and working with their directors and with their musicians and doing pieces of music that individually we would not have been able to do. But when you combine the resources of other people and friends around you, then there was nothing we couldn't do. And that was something I really got a great deal of pleasure out of. And then since then, to take a tangent, I guess, when I moved into the Middle Tennessee market, I have 2 sons that had gotten to be more of a fun age. One is in elementary school and one just started high school. But both of them got real into the world of scouting. And so that's what we do with our weekends now. And I try to be present as much as I can for them as their dad, and helping them have the opportunities that they deserve. And so that's in my time away from work. That's where my focus is.
So the idea of this podcast is to show how much sometimes our lives are trained to do one thing, and then all of a sudden we are doing something else. But that does not pretty much cut the ties with music.
No.
So what is your advice for a young musician who is starting their career, not sure of what they are doing, or they are sure of what they are doing, and have one goal only? But what?
Yeah, we're always sure of what we want to do until somebody has a different idea for us. Like I was really sure what I was going to do, and then the next thing I know is I'm over here doing something totally different. So I guess my first piece of advice would be to keep an open mind, that while it's good to have a direction, at least thought out in your head, understand that while you think you may be going down this path, life may change you to go this direction, and just be open to that, receive it. It can lead to better things than you ever imagined. The other thing I would suggest to younger people is to talk to folks, talk to as many people in the music world that you possibly can. And that includes not just your student colleagues and friends, but your professors, the administrators, the housekeeping staff. Talk to the people at your music store, anybody that's in your circle that might have anything to do with music. I mean, I'm in Nashville, so there's lots of folks around here in the recording industry, and if you want to be a roadie or anything like that. But the more people you branch out and get to know, the more ideas you're going to have, the more opportunities you may have, because folks will want you to be a part of what they do, right? And so just keep an open mind and meet as many people as you can.
And I think there's several opportunities if people want to also work in the factory, right? And work in the field. Right now in the United States, we have a need for piano technicians. And I know that Brazil needs piano technicians.
So that in that regard, for factory work, I mean, I don't know. You'd have to call them and see what they need or want, but there is definitely a need for piano technicians out there. And I would say that is tuning a piano is not for the faint of heart. It's not an easy skill. I can't do it. I've tried. It is a skill, and a lot of people don't know that out of the bat. But if your ear can take it, it's certainly something worth exploring for people, because you'll never not have a job. And usually you're working for yourself. But piano technology, maintenance of instruments, tuning of pianos is certainly a world of where there's always a need. And so you can do that by, a lot of times people start out by apprenticing underneath a technician, like get to know your piano tuner. And if it's somebody that you feel like does a good job, maybe they'll be willing to show you a few things and give you some opportunities to tune a piano or two. And then from that, you go to the next step. There are schools out there that train people, and maybe that's what your future looks like. But as far as jobs in music go, that piano technology is certainly one where there is a lot of opportunity, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's always nice seeing you, Robert. And I really appreciate you doing this interview. And I appreciate Andrea being the backup support tech person. And is there anything else you would like to talk about, or can we just close the interview today?
You're asking me?
Well, I think we can close.
Okay. Thank you all for having me. This has been great. It's always so nice to see you too, Rose, and it's been a pleasure to meet you, Andrea.
Yeah.
So,
well, you're going to be backstage with me. Wait a little bit. She's going to finalize the video, and then we can kind of talk at the end. Okay. Thank you all for being with us. It's been a pleasure once more. And thank you, Andrea, for hosting us.
Thank you very much. It's an amazing interview. I think that we need to talk more about piano and people that work with because Robert, it's an example because he is a performer. He works with Steinway that I loved it. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you here. Thank you, Rose. Thank you. Bom, realmente uma entrevista super interessante. Muito obrigada a todos vocês que estão conosco. O Piano e Suas Perspectivas é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas, Pró-Reitoria de Extensão e Cultura, Reitoria Digital da Universidade Federal de Goiás, a Mississippi State University nos Estados Unidos e Universidade del Atlántico na Colômbia, com apoio da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia de Portugal, Centro de Estudos de Sociologia e Estética Musical da Universidade Nova de Lisboa, Centro de Estudos Brasileiros da UFG, Rádio Universitária e Rádio Brasil Central FM. Fazem parte da equipe do programa Além de Mim, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Yazbek Seba e Yamira Rodrigues Nunes. Nossa proposta é levar a todos os interessados assuntos relacionados à importância da arte e seu papel na sociedade. Todas as sextas-feiras, às 17 horas do Brasil, 9 horas de Portugal, 4 horas de Nova York e 3 horas da Colômbia. Um entrevistado sempre muito especial. Até a próxima semana.